So I've been thinking about this story, a sci-fi story for YouTube. I'm not sure if it's going to be one vid or two or what. It's sort of like turning into a novel in my head. But it's got a bunch of elements to it. So let's see if we can run through them and I can give you an idea. I imagine that the story begins with the destruction of Earth. Now I know you're thinking that's not a very good start. Where do you go from there? But you see, it's going to be a false destruction. Because there's going to be this object way out. And against the background of the stars, you know, astronomers are going to notice it. And they're going to say, hey, that looks like it might be headed our way. And there'll be plenty of time and all. But over time, it's going to look more and more like it's heading directly our way. And then it's big, really big. And after a while, it becomes clear that it's going to either be a dead-on hit or close enough where it makes no difference. We're not just talking about the extinction of the human race. We're talking about the destruction of all life on Earth and the Earth itself in the way we know it. I mean, it will no longer be this oblate spheroid. It'll be a bunch of pieces orbiting the sun. So, you know, I was thinking, okay, that's kind of cool. Now I have to, you know, create some characters. They're going to be in this story, and the story is going to be like probably over a number of years. But okay, like to cut to the chase, what's going to happen is that as it comes closer, they're going to realize that this is some weird thing. You know, it's like it's huge, but it's got really elongated shape, and it's like not tumbling, and just everything in the solar system and the galaxy everywhere just tumbles if it's got an oblong shape. There's a scientific reason for that. But this isn't, and then that's when they start to think this is like not a natural object and all. But like, what happens on Earth is the religious types say, hey, this is the end of the Earth, this is, you know, the rapture and all that kind of stuff and all. And the thing about this is the scientists are saying more and more this is like dead on, we're for sure. But then there's like a revolt, like Islam and the Catholic Church, they all say, you know, they both say that, no, God would not allow this. I heard from God. God spoke to me. The Pope or whoever, I got to work all that out, says no. And then there's like these religious types saying it's the end of the world, and all of a sudden there's a movement. Because the thing is, this is not happening for a while. I mean, it's coming for us, but we've got like a year and a half or so over this time plays out, and there's some characters like Darcy and Paul who are like these young folks that are going to meet at this end of the Earth party, and like she's like an engineer, works for NASA, and then gets another job with this economic organization because there's a space race between a second space race between China and the U.S. For mining some of the mineral elements on the meteor belt, where they're going ahead and putting these structures up to collect energy from the sun, but it's like it's not international type thing. It's like commercial and all, and like they're kind of part of this. And then I guess explain more of that later. But anyway, so what happens though as it gets within the solar system, maybe like after like a year and a half after it's first noticed, they notice some really strange behavior, that it's not following orbital mechanics. Not only is it not tumbling like it should, but it's like not going where they think it should. And it's, you know, they're all the religious folks are right, the scientists got it wrong. But you know what it becomes clear is it's not an object that's natural. It's something that was created by some intelligence. And that leads to all sorts of other cool things, which because of time considerations, I'm not going to talk about. And all this is open for debate. In fact, I would like your ideas and suggestions, which I will steal. Yes, sir, because I need to work on this some more. But the bottom line is, this object parks itself in convenient orbit just where the Chinese and the Americans are doing all their work. So there's an infrastructure there. Like, how did it know? And they find out why it's not tumbling. It's got enormous angular momentum. It's rotating. It's like this huge, long cylinder, and it's rotating on the long axis, which is really weird. Really, really weird. And they also find out it's completely non-reflective. Yes, I stole that from Arthur C. Clarke, just like the monolith. And it's some kind of frickin' machine. And after a while, they figure out what it is, because it's already been designed. It's been designed back in the 20th century. It's a time machine. What it essentially is doing is it rotates at such an enormous speed, and it's made of such dense matter. It's probably made of neutronium, and what happens is it drags space-time around with it. So if you fly with the right trajectory, what's going to happen is you can actually move through space-time forward and backward. See, it's like pretty cool. And there's all these other implications, which because I have an 11-minute time limit and I don't want to make 2 of these videos, I'm not going to tell you about. But at least you'll get the idea. Anyway, Marcy and Paul end up, this is like, there's like a 20-year time span here when, you know, this thing parks itself in orbit, and we develop enough infrastructure around it to do some cool stuff. And they're working on this business relationship also for profit. Boy, this is such a capitalist pig thing. And anyway, that's going to tie into the story too. Oh, and what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and Narcy's an atheist, and Paul is a theist, and there's going to be all this religious stuff in there because, you know, I'm an atheist in YouTube, and I've got to deal with that. But then there's this cool science, okay? And it's all going to tie into the story, but quickly the idea is that they discover that you can go forward in time, just like we are now, without any problems. But whenever you go backwards in time, as you go back, and as you park yourself in a new space-time location, you create new, what I'm going to call domains, because that's what they're going to call it in the story. And what's going to happen is that physicists are going to learn so much about this, and mathematics in the future with all this is going to come together, and they're going to figure out how this works. But what happens is, instead of looking at parallel universes, they're going to look at the universe as one thing with multiple domains. And what's going to happen is that when you go backwards in time, you're going to essentially become part of a new domain. And that the universe is doing this all the time through all its quantum events. And what that means is you can never return back to the domain you came from. Which means that there are never ever going to be time travelers coming into our domain, ever. Which is really important because that's one of the arguments against the fact that we can time travel. Why haven't time travelers visited us? It would be against the laws of physics. It's also terribly, terribly cool. Because if you think about it, there are going to be no paradoxes. Because if you go back in time and kill your parents, bad thing to do though, unless they provoked you by saying you were evil or something. If you go back in time and kill your parents, you aren't killing your parents. You're killing somebody else's parents in the other domain. And that kind of makes a lot of sense. You don't get these dumb loops. Now, there's lots of ways I could talk about how all that works, but the cool thing about this is, and it's supposed to lead together with all these themes and all that, into a new notion of what time is. And that will be that what time is all about is the universe creating more domains. And this will give an explanation to the direction of time. When you move in a direction where there are more domains to the universe, that means that you're moving forward in time. And if you move backwards, which is now possible with this rotational device, which is really cool, and by the way, complies with all the laws of general relativity, although there may be issues with quantum mechanics, but we don't have any known issues with it. However, what would happen is that when you go backwards, you're going to a point in the universe where there are fewer domains. So, okay, so that's the idea, but then the themes really that are important to me would be some of the changes in the perspective of the folks on Earth as we go from the period of the scientists saying the end is coming, the sky is falling, we're all going to die, and the implications of that. And that'll occur over a period of time so that you can evolve that notion and discuss all the different changes both in theism, atheism, and just humanity in general, along with a time where this device parks itself. And at that point, what happens is the notion that we can time travel and then learning the limitations of it. But then there's some really cool implications about this as well. And they can be sociological, theological, and so forth. And then, of course, Marcy and Paul, along with some minor characters, though, can be used to kind of help focus on these things, looking through their eyes and so forth. Anyway, I'm just amazed I was able to talk about so much. There's more, but I decided to leave it there. So listen, if you're not totally blown away by the stupidity of this, I would really love to hear your ideas, and I will steal them, even if they're bad ideas. Take care.